All right, it's 2 o'clock, and we'll just kind of talk for a few minutes and give everybody a chance to get signed up on the webinar. It looks like we have about 10 people here attending the webinar, and we have about 5 or 6 people here in the class. I'm Doug Holmes. I sell real estate statistics and market analysis to the other agents in the area. I am an agent as well at another company in the area. I have several hundred agents in the Charleston area who subscribe to my real estate statistics service. Hopefully you can see on your screen at home, charlestonrealestatestats.com. And this is my service that I charge $10 a month for. Once you are signed up, which you can have it charged to your expense account at agent owned, you'll get a username and a password. And you log in. And you have access to all these wonderful charts that you won't see this. You'll see the actual site here. And you'll go to the charts and videos page, is where all the charts are located. So once you become a subscriber, that's really the only page that will interest you. And there are about 20 to 25 different charts here that you might find useful in marketing your business and in making sure that you get the right prices on listings, and making sure that your buyers don't overpay for the properties that they're buying. Maybe give you some kind of power to reason and argue with the other agent as to why your price, what your offer is for a buyer is appropriate. And I also have some videos of each one of the charts, but I also have some videos that might be important to you today. How to improve your MLS search results header. Because when we go back to the MLS and I do a search on my MLS, it's going to look a little different than yours because I've improved mine. For instance, if we do an active search in Mount Pleasant and just pull up the first 50 listings it shows so that we can see what my header looks like, my header contains things like subsection, original price, dollar per square foot, cumulative days on market. And these things are great to have, especially dollar per square foot, because you can click on that in the header and have the whole header reordered, the whole list reordered based on that one thing in the header, dollar per square foot. Now the entire list is ordered in terms of that. And so improving your header is something that's very important to make your life easier to do these things. Other things on my website that you're going to find useful that we're going to need today. We only have about an hour today. Is that correct, Liz? So I want to go through some listings and talk to you about how I would price these listings that just came up on the market in the past week. And when we do that, there are kind of 3 things I think that you need to know in advance that you could find on my website. And we've talked about this in my classes before, but the very first one is that properties sell for approximately 95% of their list price. This doesn't mean that I list your property for whatever the heck you want me to list it for and we get 95% of that. What it really means is that buyers don't come to look at it and put contracts on it until it gets within 5% of what they're willing to pay. So for instance, if you have a house that you think you can sell for $300,000, you certainly shouldn't list it for more than $315,000. 5% more than 300 is 315. If you go above that to provide yourself more negotiating room, you're probably not going to get any interest in the house at all. You have to be within 5% of what most people will pay for it. That's when homes actually go under contract. So that's a very important thing to know, and that's I have a chart here that's called my favorite statistics, so we should be able to find that. You guys, 8 most important real estate statistics, chart number 10. That's a biggie. Listings that actually end up selling sell for an average of 95% of the final list price, 85% of the original list price, because most things are overpriced by about 10% to begin with. The second thing on this list is another one of those 3 things that I mentioned that we really need to know before we start today, and that is that a healthy, balanced real estate market is 6 months of inventory. If you have less inventory than that, then you're in a seller's market. Think about being in a retail shop. If people really want your stuff but you don't have very much of it, You can ask whatever you want for it. It's supply and demand. So if there's not much competition out there for your house in your neighborhood or your MLS area, it's easy to sell your house for pretty much whatever you want to sell it for. But if there's a ton of competition, like there has been for the last 3 or 4 years, if there's 12 or 15 or 18 months of inventory, then it's very, very difficult to sell your house, and it's very difficult to get a reasonable price for it. The buyers know that they have too much selection. And so 6 months of inventory is the standard for a healthy, balanced market. So the third thing that we need to know is how to calculate months of inventory. So let's go into a neighborhood and calculate months of inventory and see whether this particular home that we want to look at is in a buyer or a seller's market. And that helps us determine kind of how we're going to price the house. We want to look at the other homes in the neighborhood. I mean, that's our goal today, is to figure out how to price homes. So I've picked out about 6 or 7 or 8 homes. We'll go through them. Maybe you can ask me about some that maybe you have listed if you would like. And I'll talk to you about how I would price these homes and why.
You would recommend going down to the neighborhood to determine what type of market is within the neighborhood?
Absolutely. We have a question in the class here. As he asked me, you go all the way down into a neighborhood to determine how to price that home. Absolutely. In fact, if it's in a big neighborhood like Park West, I'll go into the subsection, because one subsection of Park West is vastly different from another. Palmetto Hall and Dunes West is vastly different from the ones that are inside the gate. So there are cases, though, this is a great question, and it brings up a good point. You may have places where there aren't many listings in a neighborhood and you can't get much information from that neighborhood. You're trying to list a house and you may have the only house listed in that neighborhood. So how in the world do you price a house based on that? Well, you have to know what houses in the MLS area then are similar to yours. What neighborhoods, what other neighborhoods people might be looking at if they're looking at your neighborhood. Then go to those neighborhoods and try to price your house based on what's going on in those neighborhoods or in that MLS area. One of the things that you have to be aware of in every MLS area is what new construction's being built and what they're pricing their homes at. Because a lot of times in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, they've been pricing their homes more aggressively than Joe and Sally homeowner have been pricing them at. And Joe and Sally sometimes can't compete with the new construction. And you have to explain that to them. Look, we have to price our home to compete with those homes, because why would they buy our home if they can go and buy that? Now, maybe there is a good reason that they would go to your home rather than a new neighborhood. And that's how you have to work off of that to figure out what your price is. So the first home I've picked today is in Burnsdown in West Ashley. So let's go just take a look on the MLS at Burnsdown. So I'm going to do a quick search. Now, one thing you'll notice right off the bat is, and you may look at that and he goes, well, he's always got his status date set for the first of the year, and that's not true. It just happens to be that today is the end of August and all my searches are always 8 months out. So we're at the end of 8 months, so that's just coincidence that 1/1 shows up there. Tomorrow it'll be 1/2 and the next day it'll be 1/3, and it rolls because I have gone into setup. And at the very bottom of setup, I have put in 240 days for my default status date on the very bottom of the page down here. And if you go and do that, when you do a quick search, you will always be looking back that many days. So I always look back 8 months. Now, sometimes I may have to change that if I need more data. I may have to change that date, but I don't want to look at all sales that have ever occurred in a neighborhood. I've got to put some limit on it. So I go back 8 months in general. And let's look at Burnsdown. So we'll go over here to subdivision and see if I can spell that right. B-Y-R-N-E-S, down. And let's look at everything active through sold. Active, contingent, pending, and sold. I want to know what's my competition currently. I want to know, that's the actives. I want to know what's under contract, what's pending. That's what people are buying. And I want to know what's sold over the last 8 months, because I need to know what people are closing on as well. And using this information, we'll be able to calculate the months of inventory for this neighborhood and then determine if one of these active listings has the right price or not. So we click search and we see that there are 28 listings. Okay, let's look and see that we have 9 actives. Let's not worry about the contingent and pendings, and let's count the solds. So 12 is the last contingent pending, so 12 to 28 is 16. So there's 16 sold listings over the last 8 months. That's because my search was specific to 8 months of solds. If you do 6 months, then you're only going to see 6 months of solds. So I'd have, what was it again, 16? 16 solds over the last 8 months, but I only have 9 active listings. So I can sell, look at the recent history is that we have the ability to sell 16 homes over an 8-month period out of Burns Down. But we only have 9 actively listed. So we obviously have less than 8 months of inventory. How much less? Here's how we calculate it. We have to, let me get my calculator out, and we'll calculate a fraction. And fortunately for us, the fraction is the number of actives, which is on the top. So a fraction has a top and a bottom. The top number is, fortunately for us, the top number of actives, 9. We have 9 actives. 9 divided by the 16 solds that are on the bottom. So that's kind of convenient for us that the fraction works that way. It's the 9 on the top divided by the 16 on the bottom. I get a decimal for that, which comes out to be 0.5625. And then I multiply that by how many months the sales came from. For me, that was 8 months. So I've got to multiply by 8. If you did 6 months of sales, you'll have a different number in your denominator for your number of sales, and you'll be multiplying by a different number. You'll be multiplying by 6 rather than 8. But I did 8 months of sales, so I have to multiply my fraction, the 9 divided by the 16, which came out to be 0.5625. I have to multiply that by 8. 4.5 months of inventory in Burns Down in West Ashley. They're doing quite well there. West Ashley is doing pretty well. It only has about 5 or 6 months of inventory, which there is a chart for that on my page over here, months of inventory. There it is, chart number 5. If we go and look at that, we will see that area 11 is one of the higher areas. It's in the top. It's the 13th one. It has 5.9 months of inventory right now. That's a little better than 6 months, basically a balanced, even market in West Ashley. That's great in area 11, but Burns Down is doing even better than that. So it's in a kind of a seller's market. We have some areas, some MLS areas, including area 42 in Mount Pleasant, which is the second best one in Charleston, 4.3 months of inventory. That's just outstanding. And area 41 here at 5.5 months of inventory. So, and you have lots of neighborhoods that are even better off than that, like Burns Down at only 4.5 months of inventory. So anything where you have that little bit of inventory means that you're in a seller's market, and the sellers have an advantage now. And we haven't seen this in 4 years. We've been in a buyer's market in every neighborhood, in every MLS area, everywhere you went. And it's changing, and it's changing pretty quickly. So it does. It indicates a seller's market. Now, the question that Liz asked is less than 6 months indicates a seller's market, right? A 6 months of inventory indicates a balanced market, and less than 6 months means that you don't have much supply, you don't have much inventory, so you're in a seller's market. And when you have too much supply, too many months of inventory, then you're in a buyer's market. As you can see, these places down at the bottom, such as area 47 in Awandon, McClellanville, has 25 months of inventory. It takes 25 months or over 2 years in order to sell off what is available to be sold in area 47. So that's not healthy at all for the sellers. Great for a buyer, but not very healthy for the sellers. So let's go back, and the MLS number, that the property that I wanted to look at that came on the market this past week is 31 Littleton. I'll unhighlight it here so everybody can see it over the other ones. They've listed this house at $370,000 and $227 a square foot. And as you can see right off the bat, it is the most expensive of the active properties in Burns Down. It makes me want to go and find out why. Do you have tidal creek? Do you have a deep water dock? What do you have that makes your property so much more expensive than the other ones? Now, Burnsdown's an extremely nice neighborhood. People love it because of the location. Its proximity to downtown is what appeals to people. But they're old houses, 1945. Many of them have AC ductwork underneath the house and have problems in the floors because of this. But there's been a lot of renovation over the years, and you can see that people are buying them up. Let's look at the sales prices. The sales prices vary drastically from $128,000 up to $306,000. So now wait a minute, that's 8 months of sales this entire year, and we've barely been able to sell anything over $253,000. We've got 3 homes that sold over $253,000, and yet we're trying to sell this home for $370,000. Doesn't seem reasonable. Okay. One of the things that I noticed over the last 4 years, which is changing dramatically now, used to be my trick for pricing all homes, is that you had to be below the median price and the median dollar per square foot for the neighborhood if you ran a search like this. So let's quickly figure out the median price of all these homes. So there's 28 of them. So out of those 28, 14 and 15 would be in the middle. So that gives you a median price of about $235,000. I'm looking at everything. This is a good question. Mama Liz wants to know if I'm looking at just the solds or what am I looking at. I'm looking at the entire list, which includes the solds, the actives, and the contingents. I want to put it all together and give myself sort of a range of where I want to price this house. I don't actually tell a seller exactly at what he ought to price a house for. I give him kind of a range. And so I will get, a feeling for the entire neighborhood by looking at all of the things, including the active competition. So even including the overpriced in general active competition, I'm still only got a median price of $235,000. And my dollar per square foot median price, again, number 14 and 15 would be in the middle, is $205 and $215. So my house at $370,000 and $227 has both numbers above the median for the neighborhood. In the past 4 years, this means that this home would not sell. Now, this is changing a little bit now. Because the market is transitioning from a seller's market, from a buyer's market to a seller's market, this is not exactly completely true anymore. And as we move forward and it becomes more and more of a seller's market, that will become less and less true, and it will be less easy to price houses based on that concept of trying to get them under both of those numbers. So let's go just take a look at this house and find out what might be so wonderful. So one of the things I'm looking for is the lot description. Well, it doesn't say that it's on Tidal Creek or deep water. There are some properties back there in Windermere that are on the Coburg Creek. This is not. So that's a problem. Getting $227 a square foot in Burnsdown is possible. At the peak of the market, they were selling for over $300 a square foot. But getting that kind of number now is very difficult. And as you can see, we showed that getting over $306,000 this year has been impossible. It's a nice house. It's a brick home. It's 1,600 square feet, which is bigger than most in Burnsdown. That's one reason that the houses in Burnsdown get so much in terms of dollar per square foot, is that they're so small. So this is another concept that we need to make sure that you're on board with. We talked about the 95% is what a house ought to sell for if it's priced properly. We talked about 6 months of inventory. We talked about how to calculate months of inventory. But another thing that we need to talk about is the fact that smaller homes get more in terms of dollar per square foot. The bigger homes in the neighborhood bring the value of the smaller homes up. I'm sure you heard your parents talk about when you were a kid, you don't want the best, biggest home in the neighborhood. The best, biggest home is not the prized possession, really. The smaller homes get a better value because they're so small. There's a certain minimum value to the neighborhood. And I always use the example of James Island at the peak of the market. You could not buy a home on James Island at the peak of the market for under $200,000. And it didn't matter if it was in Willow Walk and the streets would be flooded, and it only had 800 square feet of space. There was just a minimum amount that people were getting on James Island at the peak of the market was $200,000. So if you had a 1,000 square foot house, you were getting $200 a square foot for your little house on James Island, which is completely unreasonable now. So there's a certain minimum price to the neighborhoods, and that makes the smaller houses get more money maybe than they ought to, and it gets them a premium on dollar per square foot. Whereas larger houses, if they got those high dollar per square foot numbers, because they're so large and have so much square footage, it would drive their prices up much higher than is reasonable for that neighborhood. So large houses often have to give a discount in terms of dollar per square foot, and small houses get a premium in terms of dollar per square foot because of the minimum and maximum of the prices in the neighborhood. So the pictures look very nice. This is a nicely remodeled home, granite countertops, beautiful new cabinets. This is one of those houses in Burnsdown that's been remodeled, and it will be highly sought after. But I don't think it's going to go for $370,000. So how much do I think it will go for? It's one story. It has 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. These are things that I look for. 2-story houses with master bedrooms upstairs is a drawback. An appraiser is going to take a little bit off for the fact that you have a bedroom upstairs. So when you're on a listing appointment and you have a house with a bedroom upstairs, that is something that your seller is going to have to give up price on. It's a drawback to have a bedroom upstairs in a 2-story house. There are a few people that want that, but not many. 1-story, say again, a master bedroom. Yeah, right. That's yes. The question is about what kind of bedroom? The master bedroom. People are willing to have bedrooms upstairs as long as they maybe can live downstairs and not have to go upstairs. So they have family members, older people have family members that visit them, and they can live in the bedrooms upstairs, but they want to live in the living area and the bedroom that's downstairs. So 1-story houses are also a premium, especially newer homes, and that's what most people want to buy are newer homes. Newer homes are almost all 2-story homes. We don't find many 1-story homes anymore. So 1-story homes are very popular. They're easier to sell than 2-story homes because there are so few of them. So this is something that I look for. A garage is also something that an appraiser or I look for. What kind of parking do you have? It doesn't have a garage. A garage would add a lot of value to a home like this. And there are some places in Burnsdown that have detached garages in the backyard. They have some larger backyards in some of those places, and they have detached garages. So 1-story, 2 baths rather than 1.5. 1.5 is a killer. Everybody wants to look for 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So if you have a 1.5 bath, that's difficult. And I had a buyer that bought a 1.5 bath, and I begged him not to because I knew I'd have to sell the home, and I knew it was going to be problematic. So it's difficult. So 2 baths is good. The house has been nicely renovated. It's more square footage than most. But it's a larger house, so we talked about the fact that you should probably get less in terms of dollar per square foot. And we're already well above the median, which was around $200. So we're probably about $30 or more per square foot more than we ought to. If we took $30 a square foot off of this, that would be around $50,000. That would put the house at $320, which would still be the most expensive thing in the neighborhood. Let's go back to the MLS and look at what our competition is to see where let's go back and order the list. If we click on this in the bottom right, it gives it to us as it was originally given to us. So we'd have to get all the way down to 330 to beat out the next house, which is 1,300 square feet. That would be great because we have 1,600 square feet and we've been renovated. 1,800 square feet, it's not that much different from ours, and it's at 325. Now, the difference between these 2 houses, and I haven't looked exactly at the houses, but look at the pricing. I want to be on those $25,000 increments. So I'd much rather be at 325 than 330. Is pricing your house $5,000 more on a list price going to get you $5,000 more on the final sales price? No. It has nothing to do with what you get on the final sales price. How you negotiate determines what you get on the final sales price. So what should a house be listed at? 325 or 330? Given my druthers, I'd always want to list at 325. Because everybody who's got a search set up for 325 and below is never, ever going to see that house that's listed at 330. And that's how people set up searches. That's how I set up searches for my buyers, is on $25,000 increments in general. So if we take this house down $50,000, we're down to 320. And so I think, and then there's a gap from the 325 to the 279. I think if this house got down to 325 and became competitive with this one on 4 Littleton and became, you know, much better than this house probably because of the 1,300 square feet, it has a marsh view, but I tell you what, you're not getting paid $253 a square foot from marsh view. Marsh view is nice and it helps to sell your home, but I'm not seeing people pay a whole lot for it. They pay for tidal creek and deep water. They like lakes and lagoons and marsh views, and they'll buy one home before they'll buy another one because of that, but they won't pay more for it. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm thinking that this home would be much better priced at $320,000. Let's go look at what the tax records say. I am amazed at how Charleston County has somehow, some way, figured out how to price all their houses on these assessments. Because if you look at the tax assessments on Charleston County, they are remarkably accurate now. Dorchester and Berkeley County are not yet. I do not see a good correlation with Berkeley and Dorchester County's tax assessments yet. But Charleston County, I do. Let's see what Charleston County has for the tax assessment on this property and what they think it's worth. Well, they think it's worth $258,000. Well, or $358,000. I'm surprised at that. I don't think it's worth that much. I think that's a lot for the house. But I think they need to get more competitive. Being the most expensive house in the neighborhood, I don't think is a good idea. What I would recommend to this seller if I was the listing agent on this house, excuse me while I try to adjust here a little bit. And I'm sorry, I don't know if we have a listing agent in the room or not. No, it's a different company. What I would recommend is the first thing that we do is we move in increments. We've priced the house too expensively. Maybe he wants to put it on the market and give it a try for a little while. We always hear that. Let's very quickly, within the first week or two, move it down to the next $25,000 increment of $350,000. I'm looking to get to $320,000, but I may not be able to convince a seller to go from $370,000 to $320,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convince him to go to $350,000 and give me an opportunity to try to sell it at that price. Nobody's going to show up. Nobody's going to knock on the door. Nobody's going to ring on the phone. And it's going to prove to him in a 2-week period that we still have it overpriced. And then we'll move from $350,000 maybe to $335,000. And then we still won't get any activity. And as soon as we start to see activity, we know we finally have it priced right. The buyers will tell you whether you have it right or not. And they will not come to this listing probably until it gets down closer to the $325,000 mark. I often use a script about numbers like 335, which are in the middle between 335 and 325. I tell the seller, you know, at 350, he looks at it, the buyer looks at it and says, I would like to buy that house for around 320 or 325, but at 350, it's too far away. I think I would be insulting them if I offered 300 and tried to negotiate to 325. Now, the seller might be quite willing to do that, but the buyer doesn't believe it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a 95% average of homes selling, you know, for 95% of their list price. That statistic wouldn't exist. People don't make offers like that because they feel like they're going to insult the seller. So they just don't even make the offers. A lot of times they don't even go and look at the house. But if you get it, Mr. Seller, to 335, now he begins to believe. Now the buyer begins to believe that I might be able to get that house for 325. You've gotten close enough to 325 that he might be willing to come and look at it now, and he might be willing to make an offer on it. Whereas at 350 or 360 or 370, he wasn't. So I know that I can't probably go from 350 to 325. getting my seller to do that. So I may get him there in increments. I may let him go to 335 for a couple of weeks, let him see that that's not working. When that doesn't work, then move him to 325. Any questions? Well, that took a lot to do one property, but we have the basis and foundation for everything. Yes, Mama Liz.
You were talking about getting showings and you weren't getting showings because of the price typically.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're getting a lot of showings and you're not getting any offers.
Mama Liz's question is, what if we are getting a lot of showings, but nobody is making an offer on the property? Well, the standard answer to that in real estate, as I'm sure Mama Liz knows, is that the condition. There must be something wrong with the condition of the house. And sometimes it's not the cosmetic appearance of the house, but it's floor plan. It's either the floor plan. Floor plan has been a killer for the last 3 or 4 years. If it doesn't set up right and people just can't buy into the floor plan, it's a big killer. And that has to do with condition, I think. That's another way of looking at condition. Condition is, does it have 2 bathrooms or does it have 1.5? Does it have a garage? Is it 2-story with the master upstairs? These are all things that I think about as condition. Another thing I think about as condition is it on the road? I hate listing houses that are on the road. The first house I ever sold was on Riverland Drive, on James Island, not on the Riverland Terrace side, but on the other side on the, of Riverland Drive, and it was on Riverland Drive. It's just an automatic 10% discount for having a property that sits on the road and has traffic passing by it all the time, not inside of a subdivision. I think it's just an automatic 10% discount. So all of these factors, I think, go into the condition of a property. Floor plan, where the master bedroom is, whether it has a garage or not, where it's located in the neighborhood maybe. I think all of these things go into speaking of the fact that people go over to see your home because it seems priced right, but they get over there and they find something they don't like. Maybe they don't like the neighbor. Maybe they see the neighbor has been foreclosed on and the grass has grown up knee high and they don't want to deal with all of that. So there are all kinds of things that they might see when they go to your house. So good question. Let's take a look. Before I go and look at another listing, let me show you what I make for myself before I go on a listing appointment. I want to show all of this to a person that wants to list their house in Burnstown. I have made a custom report, which if you are a member, a subscriber to my website, I will show you how to make. On the website, there's a video that shows you how to make custom reports. And I've made one here called One Line Solds, because the one line or any of the reports that are already in the MLS are terrible. They do not dump well into an Excel file. You want to dump this into an Excel file, and I'll show you why. All of this easily dumps into an Excel file and can be deleted. You can delete certain things like single family detached and listing number and other things. You can dump this into an Excel file and get all of this onto one page. And you can put things bold or you can put things in different color in an Excel file. It's very, very easy to edit when it's in this format. The things that come out of the MLS, out of the default reports for the MLS, are not easy to deal with. They're not easy to edit and make nice for your potential seller to look at. You want everything condensed as possible on one page so you can see it all in one quick glance. You don't want it on 3 or 4 pages. He doesn't have time to sit through and look all of that. He wants it as clean as it can be, and this is the best way to do it. So create yourself a custom report that you can click on and copy and paste into an Excel file and then edit once you have it into an Excel file. I'm sure we have Excel. Where's desktop, Stokes?
Over to the left. Just click on that, and it should be.
There's an Excel in here somewhere, isn't there? Oh my goodness, all programs. Office.
Scroll down. More. It's under Microsoft Office. There you go, right above the cursor. Click on that.
Excel. There we go. Once I've copied all this, I can dump it into an Excel file. Paste. Whoa. Wasn't so easy, right? If you get it from Firefox, you have to paste special and do text. Forgot about that. And then you can delete very easily entire columns that you really don't care to have. And you can, all of these are in burns down, so you can delete that. And you can take what you want, and you can reformat these dollars per square foot into whole numbers rather than decimals. It's just really easy to edit this rather than what comes out of the standard MLS. Was it, where am I? Here?
To the Firefox.
Firefox. Thank you. Thank you, Stokes. Oops. Okay, let's go look at another one. Let's go look at Village Green in West Ashley. Actually, you know what? We're running out of time, so let's do some here in Mount Pleasant, since we have a lot of Mount Pleasant agents in this office. Let's look at Charleston National. And let's specifically look at a subsection in Charleston National called Charleston Green. It's the first subsection in there when you come in on the left. And they're a little cheaper, a little less expensive homes than some in the further back. Ah, only two. It is Charleston. Charleston Green. That's an old Charleston name. There's a subsection in there at the very beginning called Charleston Green, and they're a little bit less expensive homes. $259, $260, $275 is the list price on this one. So $163 a square foot, though, is a bit much. You can often find homes in Charleston National in this first subsection of Charleston Green. You can often find homes in there in the $225 and $235 range. If we look for solds back a couple of years, if we went and refined the search and moved it back to about a year or so ago, what you're going to find is that most of the sales will be in the $225 and $235 range, and that's going to be fairly inexpensive for Mount Pleasant. So you see 3 solds. One of those I sold. Maybe not. I sold one in there recently, but 233, 239, 239. Then we have one under contract with a list price of 260, and we have an active one at 275. Now, I think this house is probably overpriced at this. It doesn't seem to compare with the other prices that we've been seeing in Charleston Green, but notice, it's the only one. You can get away with that when you're the only one. Just hope that nobody else shows up as far as active competition goes. So you can overprice, and this is what you're seeing right now, is you're seeing some people overprice houses a little bit and get away with it and sell them because there's no active competition. That's how much of a seller's market we are in some neighborhoods in Mount Pleasant. One-story home in Charleston and built in 2000. This is quite unusual to find a one-story home built in 2000 with almost 1,700 square feet. And it's got a little water view on the back, a little lake that runs along the golf course. And it's got a nice stainless steel appliances and quartz granite countertops. And it's a lovely little home. And I've been through a lot of those homes in Charleston Green, and it's in better condition than most of them you see. They're on a slab, so they're a little less expensive. And usually they sell for a lot less than $275. They usually sell for $233. So if we're at $233, 5% would be, 23, 24, 12. 12 above $233 would be $245. So this is probably overpriced by a good maybe $25,000 or $30,000, but they may just get away with it because the condition of the home, the fact that it's one story, it's got a 2-car garage. I think this is a little high, but I think they might get away with it. And notice they have it at 275, not 276 or 277. You see what I'm saying? They have it at the $25,000 increment. Let's look at the tax records and see what Charleston County thinks the house is worth. Yeah, they think it's worth 232. Right, just what I said, about 233. So if it's 233, you should probably have it listed at 250. So 250 would probably be a better list price for that house. But if I was the agent, I wouldn't run away from it. I've ran away from a lot of listings because the seller and I couldn't agree on what to price the property. They priced the property at such a price that I know that there's no way that we can sell it at that price, and I'm just not going to do it. And I don't believe that I can get them to be reasonable in the near future about the price. But this house, I would take it $275, and I don't think that's a problem because it's the only active listing in the neighborhood. Now, if we don't get anything, if we don't get any activity pretty soon, and there's other competition that comes on that's cheaper than us, then we will have to adjust. And this is what I tell the seller at the listing appointment. But I'll let him get away with this for a little while. The other solds that I was looking at was around 233, 239, 239. You know, they're running $135 to $140 a square foot. So at $140 a square foot, we are $20-some overpriced per square foot. And $20 times 1,700 is $34,000 overpriced. So 34 off of 275 puts me right about 240, 235, 240. That one. That one. And we do expect it to sell for just 5% lower than that. We don't know for sure what it would, but we suspect that it will sell for within 5%. So that's going to be a good comp for it, probably. This is a big problem that appraisers are going to have in the near future, is how to price these homes as prices go up. But I think they're going to handle it all right. Yes, ma'am. Those are months ago, right? Those are not in the last 8 months. So prices have changed since then. Prices are now seem to be going up a little bit, especially with Mama Liz's questions. I pull these up late. I pull these up not in the last 8 months, but over the last couple of years. So these are old sales, and so we are seeing prices move back up again, especially in Mount Pleasant. So I think it's valid that this is a reasonable list price on this house. Okay, let's do another one. Absolutely, let's do that. We have someone here in the class that's got a listing. What subdivision is it in? Well, let's take a look at Persimmon Hill. It's in Goose Creek. Let's look at Persimmon Hill. This is an area, what, 70, do you know? I bet it's 72 or 73. Let's see if we can find it. This would give us 8 months of sales. So we're going to look at Persimmon. Well, we've got some townhouses. Do you have a townhouse or do you? Okay, so all of these are townhouses. Okay. Townhouses and condominiums are only 25% of our market, and they're a little tougher to price. There's a lot going on with them sometimes that there's not with single-family homes. But as you can see, you only have 8 actives, and you have 15 to 24 is 9 sales. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have about 8 months of inventory, but you have some here that look to be going off of the market pretty soon. These were all built in the 2005 and 6 price time frame. I'm glad you brought this up because this is an easy way to price properties. When they were built in 2005 and 6 and 7, all you got to do is figure out what they paid for it and take 30% off. It sounds like a joke, but it's not. We've all lost approximately 30% in value, and if you'll look at what sales are doing, and it's true pretty much nationwide, we've all lost about 1/3 of our value since the peak of the market. Do you have an active listing in here now? 161, number 4. So if we look at the dollar per square foot, let's find the median of all 24 of these and see where you stand. The halfway point would be 12 and 13, which would be $71 a square foot, so you're a little high there. But we have to look at the size of the place. Your place is 1,600 square feet, which is kind of in the middle, a little bit larger than the middle. So you may need to give a discount in terms of dollar per square foot. And let's look at price. The median price is 12 and 13 is around, well, we've got a big gap there, but around $100,000 or so. That's about a $20,000 difference of 10, so about 105 actually. And so you're listed above the median price and above the median dollar per square foot. And let's go back and look at what the sales have actually been. These are the ones on the bottom, so there's obviously been some problems in here. Maybe some foreclosures, some short sales, and we're seeing properties selling, smaller properties selling for $63,000 and $75,000 and $77,000. And we're seeing a 1,629 square foot property, which I think yours was, sell for $115,000. So that might be a good comp for yours. And there's another one selling for $115,000 and another one about the same size as yours selling for $128,000. So those all show me that it's possible to sell your home for that much, but it's also likely that the buyers will be looking for something cheaper. So let's go look at your active competition. Well, you're better priced than all the other 1,600 square foot properties. That's the first plus. You've got 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. Most of them do. The 3 of these other actives that are cheaper than yours have only 2 bedrooms, and they're all much smaller than yours. So as far as the active competition goes, you're not priced very badly. As far as the $25,000 increments go, where would we rather see you? At 129 or 125? I would somehow convince the seller that 125 might produce a whole new set of buyers that have their search set up for 125 and under. I don't necessarily know that that's true or not, but it's my job to convince him that it is so that we can get the price to a lower number and maybe get it sold. Okay? Let's look at the tax records and see if this property has changed hands over that boom or if they've owned it since 2004. So that's probably about what it's worth. Well, it's not worth quite that now. We've lost, 2004 was kind of at the peak, so we've lost a little bit since then, but we haven't lost 30% in value since then. Berkeley County and Dorchester County are not nearly as good at appraising these things on the taxes. They still think it's 156. If I was the owner of this property, I'd be going and debating my tax bill. I think a lot of people in Dorchester and Berkeley County should be debating their tax bills. Charleston County seems to have got them pretty much correct. I'd go to 125 and see if that produces any activity. And then from there, maybe to 115 if that doesn't do the trick. But you're already, the best of the competition. Other properties anybody's got? If not, let me look at one in Sneak. Okay, go ahead.
2253 Lazy River Drive.
What's the neighborhood?
Really, I guess Sylvan Shores, yeah.
Sylvan Shores is
It's
it's
kind of like
an unusual neighborhood because there's all kinds of things in there, and so we'll have a little bit more work to do. That's okay. We've got just a single family home, right? I don't think there are any condos in there, but we'll just take those out just in case.
deep water.
Oh dear, it's deep water. Is it this one for $435?
No, it's not on the market.
It's not on the market. And how old is it?
Don't know to answer that. I would guess it's
There are new houses in that neighborhood, and there are old houses.
It's one of the older homes.
It's one of the older homes. Has it been?
They can get it, renovated.
Has it been renovated? Has it been sold recently? No. Well, you will see some expensive homes in there selling for $167 and $170 a square foot, and the active listings at $167 a square foot. And you'll also see things actively listed for $119 a square foot because there are some old homes in there that have not been renovated. Now, your property's on deep water, no question. Got a dock? Yes, has a dock. Well, I'll tell you, just off the top of my head, I'd like to go back and tell you about history a little bit. Before all of this started 4 years ago when we went down, you could sell deep water property all over Charleston that had good access to deep water for $400 a square foot if it was a nice home. You can no longer do that. Tidal Creek property all over the Charleston area sold for $275 a square foot. If it was a nice custom built home on a Tidal Creek, it would sell for $275 a square foot. If it was on deep water, it would sell for $400 or more a square foot, and that was not abnormal. Nowadays, we've cut that down considerably. Deep water often goes for in the $250 a square foot range or less, and Tidal Creek maybe $175 to $200 to $225, just depending on how much access to the deep water that you have. $250 for deep, depending on how nice the home is, how well it's been renovated. That's kind of where I would start. Again, you have to give a range. Those are harder homes to price, and most of the time the seller of that home is going to determine the price, not you, because it's an expensive home. It's on deep water, and you just, you have to persuade him the best you can. But those people are harder to deal with than people in a regular subdivision. They just are. But you're trying to get it as close to the $200 a square foot price as you can. It's going to be somewhere between $200 and $300. That's a big range, but you want to, right? You want to be nearer to the $200 as possible, and they want to be nearer to the $300. So it's up to you to get them to listen to you as much as possible. Well, you can look at deep water. We can look in for deep water. This is a good point. We can't just look at Sylvan Shores. It's just not going to work. This is where you have to go outside and look at the MLS area and look at deep water properties that have been selling or that are actively listed. So you do a quick search for all of those in West Ashley that have a lot description with deep water. Now, you've only got 44 of them, and a lot of them are probably active. You want to show this to your seller and say, there's a lot of competition out there. There are 34 properties being actively listed with deep water in West Ashley, and in the last 8 months, we've only managed to sell about 8 of them. So months of inventory for deep water property, not good. Yeah, a couple of 3 years. So that's not good. So you can use the same kind of ideas that I taught you earlier about months of inventory here to get them to be realistic. But you'll see sales in the 230, 207, 205, 244, 227, 205 range. So again, we're not looking at $400 a square foot anymore. We're looking in the low 200s. Okay. Parkdale. Yes, Parkdale's behind the Acura dealership that used to be down there. That's a nice neighborhood. And there, yes, you're right on the Stano River down there. Parkdale. How so? Right. It's very large. And that drives the price up. Where is this? Yeah, $3 million. So it probably has several acres of land, exactly. 55 acres of land. So you have to do your research when you do your listing appointment and discount properties like that. And so when the seller, his eyes are going to go to that. And so you have to be prepared to explain to him why his property doesn't match up with that one. And you may even take it out. You may delete it from your Excel spreadsheet. Do we have time for one more? Okay. Sure. Old Bridgeview. What's the neighborhood? The Bristol. Beautiful, beautiful location, right on downtown with a dock, with a marina, more than a dock. Wow. There's some properties for sale. There are 7 active listings in the Bristol, and they're actively listed for $200 and $300 a square foot. And there are 3 that are under contract. So when I'm doing my listing appointment, when I'm trying to price a property, I want to see everything. I want to see what my active competition is. I want to see what the what's under contract, and I want to see what the solds are. So we see the solds not selling in the $300 a square foot range, but selling in the low 200s for the most part. There's one for $286, smaller property, and there's one for $335, much higher number, and probably a reason why. Who sold this? Oh, okay. So you can tell us why this one got that much money. This sold in 2012 for this much money. So it sold recently. What happened? That's a lot of reduction. That's a $400,000 getting real. Oh, well, that's a 3-bedroom, almost the same size for $475. That was a foreclosure. Okay. And we see some 1,700 and 1,600 square feet now listed for in the 5s. This is the same property, just listed with 2 different agents. Okay. So we're seeing things now being sold in the $300,000 and $400,000 price range. And which property is yours? Which one? So of the active listings, it's one of the 3 very highest. And the argument would be that maybe it's bigger, but what we're seeing down here is that we can sell them for $475 that big. Maybe that was a foreclosure, and maybe that's an anomaly, but maybe even in the 500s would be more reasonable than $799. See what Charleston County has to think about it. They still have they're collecting taxes though. So they think a lot of the property. So I would be, if I was Mr. John Jordan, I would be debating my tax bill because I can't sell it at $799. So I think what he has to do is he has to start dropping his price, as I mentioned, depending on his motivation. Right. Right. It certainly depends on his motivation. He's $200,000 less than that now, so he's obviously motivated. How motivated is he? I would be asking him to reduce the price $25,000 every 2 weeks until we got some activity on it. If he balks at that, then he's not motivated. And if I were him, I wouldn't be very motivated right now because I expect the prices of everything to be going back up in the near future. Of course, I got to be able to look at his checkbook to tell you how motivated I'd be too, because he could have some other things going on in his life where he needs to sell this property. And if he does, the best way to get it sold is to reduce the price by $25,000 every couple of weeks so that it shows up on the hot sheet until he gets some activity.
So you would do, you would do this Bristol condominium the same way you said do the others. You do the medium, the whole, active, and sold, and you do the same way.
Mama Liz wants to know if I would do this exactly as I was doing a regular subdivision, and the answer is no. I mean, the Bristol and the properties in this high-end and deep water properties just can't be done in quite the same way. I mean, you do this, but your arguments are going to be a little different. You want to show him that these properties are available. Yeah, Marilyn's question is, we may have buyers for this property, but they're coming in with much lower offers. That's because they're seeing this comp and they want the same thing. And they're probably not going to get it, and he's probably not going to get what he wants, and they need to find some kind of middle ground to make both sides happy. And that may not be doable because there's a long way between one and the other. It's hard. I try, in order to teach what I like to teach, I have to go to more normal circumstances. And these are not normal properties that we've just been talking about. Let's do one more that's a little bit more normal to finish up here. Let's go look at Snee Farm. A great neighborhood, a great golf course in Charleston, middle of Mount Pleasant. Eight months of sales. So here we have 17 attendees now. That's good. We have Snee Farm. Now understand that Snee Farm, if you know Snee Farm, it has a little neighborhood off to the side called Snee Farm Gardens. And if those were to show up here, we'd want to kind of take those out because those are very small, not very well built little slab homes that really don't compare to the rest of these homes in here. So these two for sure we'll want to take out. And sometimes they're in Snee Farm Gardens and don't say so. So you have to be knowledgeable enough to look for those as well. Because if you go on a listing appointment and you don't find these little tricks for the neighborhood, and the owner of the house certainly knows all the tricks for the neighborhood, it makes you look bad. So if you don't know the neighborhood that well, you might want to ask around the other people in the office if there's anything in particular about that neighborhood that you ought to know. And Snee Farm Gardens is something that you ought to know about that neighborhood. So I'm guessing that these on Daffodil and Ambling are also in Snee Farm Garden and probably just aren't listed that way. May not be, but Daffodil probably is. But the house that I wanted to look at was, let's see if I can find it here, Colonial Drive, 1001 Colonial. $350,000, $165 a square foot. It's a one-story house. Again, hard to find. Very hard to find in Snee Farm even. They're in there, they're just not for sale. So when they do come up for sale, they sell pretty quickly and you get a little bit more for them. Again, this all goes back to supply and demand. There's not a supply of one-story homes in Snee Farm. So you may be able to get a little bit more than you might expect. So to go back to what Mama Liz said earlier, if you do just exactly what I tell you to do and apply it the exact same way for every neighborhood, it doesn't always work. You have to know the little details. The devil is always in the details. And looking at one-story homes and whether it has a master on the first floor, where it's located in that neighborhood, such as Snee Farm Gardens, might tell you a lot more about the property than we can just generalize. So you have to look at that. The house was rebuilt and updated after a fire in 2000. These are things that we're going to want to talk to Dee Dee about, the agent. Let's go take a look at the house and see what the pictures look like. It's actually quite a beautiful house and has been updated very nicely. I don't know what that's about. But a nice looking house, but an older house. It's got the old galley kitchen in it, so it's not as open of a floor plan as you might see today, but it is a one-story home, and people that want one-story homes will be willing to give up some of those things for the one-story home. They're very sought after. Now that doesn't look like first floor. Oh, that's a garage or work. That's a frog. So that's what I started to say. That doesn't look like a first floor. That looks like a frog. And so while most of the living area is downstairs, it does have a frog in it. Nice backyard with a privacy fence. It looks like that may be a painted brick siding. So a lovely home. Now let's look at the price. $165 a square foot. Let's see how big this home is. 2,118 square feet. Well, the middle of these 47 would be 24. So that would be, so we're just underneath the middle. So maybe we get a little premium in terms of dollar per square foot, but not much. We're pretty close to the middle as far as size goes. Let's look at price. The middle price would be number 24, which would be $335,000. So we're not very far away from that. 335 to 350, we talked about that being pretty close. And the dollar per square foot, the middle is 152. We're at 165, so we might be just a little high, but probably not much, and probably not much because of the fact that we're a one-story house. So again, I think I found a listing that's fairly well priced. A lot of times when I do CMAs on properties like this, I find all kinds of reasons to beat up properties and say there's no way in heck you're going to sell the house for that much. It's just never ever going to happen. And I think maybe the one in Burnsdown was probably like that for $370,000. But I'm seeing a lot more and more agents able to get the sellers to be realistic about the price. But I think that there are lots of caveats to pricing a home, such as garage, one story, other things like that. So I don't think this house is terribly overpriced. If it doesn't move quickly, though, I'd be wanting to go to that 335 mark and ultimately 325. These would be my targets. Not very long at all. It just came on the market on the 20th of August. So I don't think it'll be around long simply because of the fact that it's a one-story home. So part of what I'm telling you today is not just how to list houses, but how to look for houses that you want to list. You know, what neighborhoods should you farm? How hard should I fight for this listing? How willing should I be to let the seller list at his price instead of mine? If it's a one-story house, it has a master bedroom downstairs, it has a two-car garage, and all the neighbors around it look nice. These are things that go into my calculations of whether I really want to fight for that listing or not. If all those things are negative, I'm running away like the wind and letting somebody else take on all of those problems because I can only sell so many houses. I want to take the ones, I want to list the ones that I know I can sell, that I can deal with the seller. If you can't talk the seller into believing what you believe at the listing appointment, it's never going to happen. If you can't gain control of the relationship at the listing appointment, that's probably never going to change. And so if you can't get him to do what you want, then it's probably best to move on and let somebody else who maybe has a different approach than you do and can convince him, let them take care of him or let them have his problems, however you may want to look at it. You can only sell the houses that you can sell. That's all we have time for today. Okay? I'll be glad to come back and do this another time maybe and look at some more properties. What do I need to do? Stop recording. Thank you all for coming and being on the webinar today. If you have any properties that you would like for me to take a look at very quickly for you, just email them to me and I'll be glad to do that.